How's it going, everybody? My name is Ron Sparkman, and I am the Chief Curiosity Correspondent at the Space Foundation Discovery Center. And today we have as our guest the one, the only Mike Mongo, astronaut, teacher, author, and so many things. Mike, how are you doing today?
Pow, pow, pow. Ron Sparkman, it is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Oh, man, so glad to have you on. And we've got so many cool things to talk about. You're always up to something new, always, reaching out and doing amazing things in the science, SciComm community. Science communication community. For those that don't know what that one is, that's a tongue twister. But so the question I always like to ask first is, how did you get interested in space and science? What was the thing that made you say, I got to do this?
Oh, well, I'm 55. So when I realized I couldn't be a superhero at the age of 4, and then we went and sent people to the moon, I understood that was an actual job. That's when I became just fixated on space. Absolutely.
And so when did you know that you wanted to do something in the space industry?
Ever since I mean, like age 4 or 5, no question. I just went on and did everything else that I wanted to do in life. And then at age 42, I was going up the list to see what I hadn't accomplished yet. I was working as a marine science researcher in the Florida Keys, and I was having a great job, had a great experience. And I read this thing about the people who animated the animator from Nightmare Before Christmas. And you know that movie? Remember that movie?
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah. And so he said that was his dream job, and he was having the best time. And then it hit him midway through. Oh my gosh, I got to figure out what I'm going to do next. And that's really where I was. And he went on to do James and the Giant Peach, which is a pretty awesome film. And I went, and at that moment, I was going up the list trying to figure out what I had not accomplished. And the only thing that was on my career lifetime list that I had not accomplished at age 42 was astronaut. And when it hit me that I was 42 and I wasn't an astronaut and I had another arguably 42 years to go, and that in all likelihood, because I wasn't going to be an astronaut, because if you wake up at 42 and you're not an astronaut, guess what? Chances are you're not going to be an astronaut. I had the opportunity on the spot to come up with what I became, my astronaut teacher. So I wrote the astronaut instruction manual. I began talking in front of students and engaging with students anywhere. Like I just became that guy. I'm like, how are you doing? What do you want? I mean, like, they trained me so well, because like I learned very early on, never ask a student, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because we grown-ups ask them that so much that it's cliche and it's just like noise on their ears. So then with all of that, in 2000, I started going to space conferences. And then in 2011, I got invited to DARPA's the 100-year Starship Public Study Symposium they held in Orlando. They brought everybody in before they awarded it to Dr. Mae Jemison to run it. And I was the only person there that represented students in a mission that had a 100-year window. And from that moment on, I became the go-to guy for pretty much anything to do with students in space.
So this reminds me. So we had an impromptu conversation the other night. I was doing some live stuff, and you came on and you were talking about this experience you had where, you got on stage in front of a bunch of astronauts and introduced yourself as the astronaut teacher.
My astronaut teacher, Mae Jemison. So he got awarded. She won the 100-year Starship. Like, she's in charge of that organization. She invited me to speak at Johnson Space Center in 2012, maybe 12. And so I went and I gave a talk on the future of space. The future of space is 9 to 12 years old. And in front of a room of space professionals, including astronauts, I stood up in front of the room and I said, my name is Mike Mongo and I'm an astronaut teacher. And I want you to know, like, there's a thing called imposter syndrome, and it plays in our heads no matter how accomplished or how much we've done. And I'm in this room at this conference center with astronauts, and I'm introducing myself as Mike Mongo, astronaut teacher. And I knew for sure that they were going to pull me off stage, that they were going to arrest me. I would be taken away to the authorities, the space police. And instead, what happened, of course, is that everybody came up afterwards and said, "Thank you, great job. This is what we need." And it just kept on going from there.
So the obvious question is that I think everybody always asks you, Mike, is how'd you get so handsome? See, I remember from the other night.
You're my friend. You are my friend. Rod Sparkin. You're right.
But so they aren't actually upside down, but there's a really fun story, and I love it too, is because you know that they're gonna you know that somebody's gonna ask the question, and the thing that I love about it is after I ask the question, the answer is even better, and what you do with it is probably the best part of it. So. Give us the breakdown about what do you refer to them as? Let's do that first, because they're not upside down. So you just they're just your glasses.
I designed. I mean,
they're just your glasses.
I took them to an optometrist and I had them designed in this way. This is the 5th iteration. I still leave a little mark on my nose. I still haven't got that part carved out just right yet. And I want you to know, students, it is so fun to work with students because students are honest. Students, what you see is what you get. If they have a question, they're going to ask you. Whereas grown-ups, I get the opportunity, or especially in the before, I get the opportunity to work with grown-ups and communicate and share how to communicate and interact with students, because sometimes for some reason, professional grown-ups forget how to do that. And so I'll walk into a room. Now, I learned early on that if I walk into a room like this, and I say, hi, my name is Mike Mongo. I'm an astronaut teacher. People will be on their devices, look up, and then go back to their devices. However, when I walk into a room and my glasses are like this, I go, hi, my name is Mike Mongo. I'm an astronaut teacher. They look up, and then they do this. They double take just like that, and I have their attention. And I think I shared the other day that one of the things that I get to share with students about that experience is that it's really easy to get people's attention. The important thing is to have something to say that's worth hearing afterwards. And so what I have to say, when I'm talking with students, is that tomorrow's jobs are in space, that they have permission to imagine themselves living, working, and playing in space. And that most importantly is that they have a role here. They have a place here. And that is so invaluable. I can't tell you. I mean, because I've been doing this for 15 years now, almost 15 years, some of the people that I started working with when they were 8 are now in college and even pursuing their postgrad, doing postgraduate work, and they're in the running to be astronauts, and tons of space professionals. Holy smokes! I mean, literally thousands, because I got to work with SEDS and I got to work with. So these glasses are really just a way of making sure that everybody's paying attention, because I have something really important to say. The most important thing I have to say is that I share with both students and grown-ups is that by solving for space, we can solve for every challenge we face on Earth. We can solve for energy. We can solve for health. We can solve for inclusion, equity. We can solve for the illusion of scarcity by solving for space. That's really important. That's worth.
I can't agree with that more. I think that's and that's one of the really big things that's really big for us, especially at the Discovery Center. So we get that question a lot. You have a bunch of people that say, "Well, should we? Is it saving Earth, or is it going to Mars?" Well, why isn't it both? There's 7 billion people out here.
It's not either or. It's an and both.
Yeah. Why does it need to be that? Do we need to have eco cities, or do we need to have AI cities? Well, you're going to have both. That's how we survive, probably.
Okay. I got to tell you something about the glasses, though, because you said that it's the first thing that people ask me, and I want you to know that it's the first thing that students ask me. I have worked with grown-ups for days. And I can see on their face they're dying to ask. I can see it. And then finally they'll see that I'm all right, and they'll like, oh, okay, so I can talk with him. And then they'll saddle on up to me and they'll be like, can I ask you a question? And you know what I was like, and I point out, as you know, I say it's how did I get so handsome, or how do I know I understand.
It's one of the best line openers. So just real quick before you finish that, one of our friends at the Discovery Center, she comes to a lot of our events. She's part of our social. Her name is Bailey Burns, and she does an engineer girl, and she does all this stuff. And so Bailey had an injury on her foot at Space Symposium last year, and so she's in a boot and she's on a little scooter, and everybody comes up to her and says, "Hey, what happened?" And she's like, "Shark bite, man. I was saving kids and shark got me, And everybody just immediately, like, that was such a great way to introduce herself that nobody forgot her. She's already got a great personality anyway. She already has that energy that a lot of great science communicators have. But when you open up with, I mean, seriously, we're talking about astronauts. An astronaut that she looks up to asks her about it, and that's the first thing out of her mouth. And everybody just grins from ear to ear. And that's, you know, it can be very simple if you got that line to hook people with. So now, how do you follow up with it? And she had something great for that too, especially the astronaut. She always wanted to ask about the thin blue line, and that was kind of her thing. But I love that you say that, you know, there's that thing that you have, you know, like, okay.
I mean, it's not just one. I have plenty. Like I've been doing this for a while.
It's kind of your thing
I'm
now,
a believer. Right? Yeah, like I'm dedicated and committed. Like I'm confirmed. Like people can Google me and it comes right up. Like, this is who I am. And not everybody gets it. Like, I want you to know that I traveled in the airports a lot, through airports a lot, and there would not infrequently be somebody who was angry. They would see me and their facial expression was anger. It's weird, so strange. Like, how can a person be angry at a stranger? Like, for real? And then there's the
internet.
No, I mean, like this, like, yeah, but that's anonymous.
I get what you're saying.
This is live in person.
Yeah.
And then like those were anomalies, but consistently, really consistently, people will walk up to me and whisper into my ear, "Your glasses are upside down," and they're not joking. And I'm super happy. It's one of my favorite experiences. But my top favorite, that though I love that is awesome. That's very genuine and kind, and I get to thank them and show them, like, no, they're made this way. They're like, whoa. So one of my favorite is that when I'm in a public place and someone sees me and they just start smiling, like they smile, they're so happy. I have never not introduced myself to a person who gives me that response. I have to say hello because their priorities are right. If we can laugh at ourselves, we can move this whole thing forward.
That's a big one, man. It really is. And it's something that I'm really big on. And, you know, I'll say a lot of stuff about myself that I'm very clearly joking about, and it takes people a minute to do it. So, I think that's such a big thing, and it can break the ice so easily. Anytime I've met somebody that I looked up to, and I've got to do that a whole lot in this business, is, you know, the ones that stick out to me the most are the ones that quickly, like, cracked a joke or grinned ear to ear and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And they're still thrilled about it. And that is about 98% of the people in the space industry are just like thrilled to talk to you about it. Listen, I was a space nerd at one point. At some point, all of us were, 8-year-old kids. Well, for me, it was 33-year-old, but 8-year-old kids that just looked up at the stars and just wondered what's out there. Can I be a part of that? Can I get there someday? How can I be involved? And so it's always great to meet. Almost everybody is like that. And I really, really love that. But that's laughter. You know, if you can't grin and you can't smile, somebody told me earlier that they were like, I want to have a job someday that I get to say, I'm freaking out about doing my job in a happy way as often as I get to. I'm like, it's one of the best things in the world in the space industry is that. And it doesn't seem to change by age. You know, the director of astrophysics at NASA, Dr. Paul Hertz, I think he's still the director of NASA astrophysics. He was when I met him. Is grinning ear to ear and can't wait to talk about all the different, all the different telescope missions that are out there, the space telescope missions. Hubble's been doing this, and W1 is coming. And don't forget, this is what we're going to be able to see with James Webb Space Telescope. We're going to look back further in time than we've ever been able to see before, billions and billions of years ago. Yeah. And these sputters are going to be massive. It's going to take up a whole wall at NASA. And this guy is thrilled to talk about this. I'm like, I was already amped getting into it, let alone. Yeah. And I know that you have to do that. And it's got to be a really big thing for you because you get the child wonder. Yeah. What?
And like you remind me of Nicole Stott is always so excited when I talk with her, and Leland Melvin. These are two people that Ron Guerin was like. There's all of these human beings who are so kind and generous. It's unbelievable. Mae Jemison. Oh my gosh! One time I was at the I think I was at the International Space Development Conference. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. And she was the guest. She was the guest of honor. And she comes in and she's wearing a gown. She looks regal. I mean, it's Afrocentric. It's fantastic. She looks stellar. She comes in. Literally, there's hundreds, if not 1,000 people at this particular gathering, and it's outside. It's kind of cool. There's a pavilion they're going to have the talk at, and the crowd parts for her. And I'm standing there, and of all the people that she could have walked up to talk to, she walks up to me.
Yeah.
Like I hadn't talked to her in 2 years.
Yeah. But
like,
it means you made an impression, right? Yeah.
That's why we go to space. That's the best quality that we can bring here. That's people that we have real connection with.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I talk to people, why are we going to space? To bring love.
Yeah.
Like to bring love, really, to bring compassion, even at the worst that humanity can be. And that's obviously war. The times that people have shown compassion for one another, even the enemy, I Google. I mean, it moves me. And I get to share that with students and remind grownups about that. And with the idea of space. I didn't know that we would solve all the challenges we face on Earth by solving for space when I started.
Yeah.
I learned that. I experienced that.
Yeah.
And now I can argue it. Now I know it. The device, this device, I know what powers it. I know the glass comes from space development. I know the battery comes from space development. The solid state becomes the microcircuitry we develop for space. The GPS, like all of these things come from the space industry. And when we involve everybody, like I get to go to Haiti. I was the first U.S. American educator to teach in Cuba, and I taught about space. And when I get to go to these places where people don't have traditionally space directions or are space minded, because in the U.S., every student grows up knowing that astronaut is an opportunity. And we just take it for granted, right? But then in other places like Haiti, when I'm in a classroom in Haiti and I say, have you ever imagined being the first Haitian astronaut? Students have never even imagined being an astronaut. Mm. It's not on the table. They're imagining how will I get food today? Literally, genuinely. That's their thought.
Yeah.
And
that's a game-changing thing when you go somewhere. So I was in Africa, last year, and we ended up going to Zanzibar after we had done Kilimanjaro. And as we're walking around, we walk into this school, and these kids are thrilled, absolutely thrilled to see us. And at the end, they asked if we could pitch in money to help with the school students, and we're like, of course we can. Everybody, but that's a place where everybody's really we have so much and they have so little. And
when for us to give these places, I leave everything behind. I leave computers. I leave everything. I leave with nothing because I know that I'm going to come back here and just get everything again.
Yeah. And when I look at them, I'm like, I wonder if how much they know. Let's say, do they know that humans have been to space? They're little, so I mean, is this something that they ever hear about? Is this something that they see on TV? What's important there? Because that island is as foreign to me as Europa is. It was amazing. It was incredible. And every single time that, I'm sure you have the same thing. I'm sure plenty of other people that are listening have the same thing too. That when you travel the world, you get to see the world through a different point of view. But we are so lucky to have so much, but those things then bleed out elsewhere. Those technologies get to do so much. In fact, with the Discovery Center this summer is, we're working on it, but at the Discovery Center is our Summer of Discovery. And the whole idea is better living through space. How has life improved because of that? And you have people that are constantly out there. Kevin De Bruyne, his TEDx talk, he says, without space, we die. People don't realize how much of space is in every day. And we're actually doing a challenge on Twitter right now that says, I think it's #space in my place, if I remember correctly. And we're daring people to find something in your house that we cannot tie back to space in some way, either through the technology itself, it came from space, or there's some really great story about it that you will be fascinated by that. And I think that's a really great thing to kind of be able to take out there and share with people. And it's all around you. There's so many people that don't realize what is happening around them is so much because of what happened in space. And I think that's a great thing to kind of take that message everywhere, which is kind of something that you do. So somebody asked something a little while ago, and I think this is a perfect segue into that, is basically what you do. What does astronaut teacher mean? Because some people may not know exactly when they hear that term what that is.
I love talking about that. And specifically because it is often confused with astronaut trainer. An astronaut trainer is somebody who works with people who are actually astronauts in training to be the best astronaut they can be. What I get to do is I work with people before they become astronauts. And I work with any number of people who I work with a number of people who are astronauts. I work with a number of people who are in the running to be astronauts. And I work with a lot of people who want to be astronauts, including grown-ups. So what I have the opportunity to do is to cherry pick the students that are doing the work. That, like Alyssa Carson, who is 19, I've known since she was 13, and who's worked along with her dad, Bert Carson, to be the first kid in space. And
just real quick, I got to do a drop there real quick. We talked to Alyssa Carson 3 weeks ago. Make sure you check it on Space4U Live on YouTube.
She's the best. She's amazing. I mean,
she's
Alyssa
incredible.
Carson, the reason I work with Alyssa is because of the work that she's done. Like I think I mentioned to you, she sold cakes to pay for her space camp. She did cake sales to pay for her space camp. She does her homework. She listens to her dad. She's kind. She's generous. She's helpful.
I have quite literally done my homework beside of Alyssa. You know, we do Project Possum together, and we went to go do micro G fights.
And
yeah.
Youngest person to do Project Possum.
Yeah, she is. She still is. We still don't have anybody that I don't think there's anybody that's. I don't know that we're ever going to beat that because that was a special circumstance. She was so serious and she was so focused. And Jason Reimuller, who's going to be a guest on the show next month, because he got stuck in Russia, actually, or I'm sorry, in Siberia to be specific. So he was there when everything hit. So he's been there. He's just now coming home.
Really?
Yeah. He's just now coming home. So he's been there for like an extra month and a half or so. Yeah. But so we're sitting there.
I get to work with these students, and when they put themselves out there in a different way, a lot of students will contact me and say, "How can I do this?" And then I give them the answer, and they'll either follow up or they won't. They'll either do what I suggest. Like writing letters is the most it's the easiest thing in the entire world. Handwrite a letter to some space professional that you are inspired by or want to work with. Like I have that video, write a letter to NASA's Jim Bridenstine. We're going to space. We're sending human beings from the United States back to space next week. The administrator who's in charge of that is Jim Bridenstine. And Jim Bridenstine has got one of the hardest jobs in the entire nation right now. Like the administration and the way the U.S. is running right now is a little hurly-burly. And yet NASA is succeeding. That's saying something. Okay? And so a student having a note from, like you can write a letter to Jim Bridenstine and he'll write you a letter back. And you'll have that for your entire life. When we as students do that, it inspires us. It opens up pathways for us. And then another thing is that when we reach out to individuals, when we as students reach out to grown-ups or space professionals, a lot of times those people will become our allies or our mentors. It happens all the time.
Constantly, yeah.
And the other thing is, I get to explain to students, is that almost every grown-up that you reach out to will want to support or encourage or help you in some way. Almost all of us are not jerks. It's amazing. Almost all of us are not jerks. It's fantastic. We're so fortunate in that because it could be the other way around.
There's so many backgrounds and there's so many disciplines and stuff that people can get into where that might be what you run up on. And that's a great thing that you see throughout space and science, and that everybody at one point has been there, right? And I think that's a huge thing. And so let's actually jump into that, because not only do you work with younger students, but you have a background with SEDS as well. So let's give a bit of a background in case people haven't seen it before. I have talked about SEDS with other guests, but they don't know what SEDS is, what it is, and how you worked with them in the past, and maybe even still currently. I'm not entirely sure if you're still with them.
I'm special to the board with SEDS right now. So the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space is one of the most important student organizations in the country. And they've just started having some middle school chapters, and they have high school chapters, and they have 100 college chapters around the country. And students will go to a college and they'll start a SEDS chapter. It's really easy. I did it. In fact, in 2014, I went to my first SEDS conference in 2013. In 2014, my friend Andrew Newman was speaking at a SEDS. No, I think it was 2015 that I saw him speak. And at 2014, he and I met, but he went on to become the chairperson of SEDS. And I was watching him talk, and our friend Josh Jenkins, who now works at ULA, was sitting next to me. We're at the front, our friend's on stage, and we're watching, and I was like, wow, you know what? Even though I've done 13 years of university, I should go back to school just so I could join SEDS. Like, I should go back to college so I could become a member of SEDS, because so many of my friends are in SEDS and have been through SEDS, and SEDS wasn't there when I was in school. And my friend Josh Jenkins, who completely underestimated me, said, yeah, right. Well, it is the future. I mean, I was practically enrolled on the phone by the time that conversation was over. I went back to school. I joined SEDS. Midway through the year, I was just taking some writing courses at a local community college in Key West. I was in Key West at that time, and midway through, one of the board at large members had to bow out, and so there was an election, or a temporary election. So I was encouraged by the board to run, and I was like, I don't know, it's like unfair. I have an advantage, and they're like, no, you're doing the work. Run. I ran. I got the position. I became the oldest active member of SEDS ever. I became the oldest board member of SEDS. And then also when Space Vision happened, SEDS puts on a conference every year called Space Vision. Now, yes. Will Pomerantz and Lori Garver. Will Pomerantz at Virgin Galactic helps a lot on this. He's one of the advisors. Lori Garver is an advisor, alumni advisor.
Quick drop here. Will Pomerantz was recently on Space4U. Make sure you check it out on spacefoundation.org. You just keep dropping names of people that we've been talking to, which just makes me look great. I did not put Mike up to this.
Well, Will's one of the greatest guys you'll ever want to meet.
He is incredible. Last year at Space Symposium, I was sitting with him and like 7 or 8 of the brookies that were there, and it was
the
just
Fellowship.
Yeah, and it's Deanna Cindy and just like the whole. Seriously, everybody that's sitting there was incredible, and there are only a few of them. And you just sit and look at it, and just the way that he is, what he brings to the table, the kindness that he has, what he wants to do with the space industry,
of everybody.
Yeah. The support of everybody.
Support of women, support of people of color, support of people who haven't been born with critical advantages. Like he makes it like Krista McAuliffe, who the teacher who died in the Challenger explosion, said, space is for everybody. And I don't know if there's anybody who embodies that at any more than Will Pomerantz.
He is.
But also
he is a wonderful example to everybody. I agree.
Lori Garver, who was the deputy administrator of NASA. These are 2 people that work with SEDS and that help SEDS put on the Space Vision Conference. So students put on one of the largest space science conferences around in the country annually. Every year, Space Vision. Space Vision has been going on for at least 20 years. SEDS is over 30 years old. And it was started by Peter Diamandis and Bob Richards from MoonX and Todd Hawley, who died. And those are the 3 founders. And it has turned into almost over 50% of the people who join SEDS in college go on to work in space and science careers. The camaraderie of belonging to SEDS, and you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be a physicist, you can be a business major, you can be in arts. And so I turn students onto SEDS, and I get to work on special SEDS projects. Like we're working on establishing more chapters at historically Black colleges and universities. We're working on establishing high school chapters, more high school chapters, because Andrew Newman, who I mentioned earlier, he went on to start SEDS and become the chairperson of SEDS from being introduced to it in high school. He went to an ISDC, saw the youngest person there as a college student, and walked up to them and said, how do I do what you're doing? And incidentally, speaking of Alyssa Carson, when I spoke with her last week, I asked her, what suggestion would you give on my show, Astronaut Adventures? What suggestion would you give to students to succeed like you? And she said, when I was younger, if I had vocalized more, if I had declared my intention, if I had said it to everybody around me. And the reason for that is because you never know who around you has a connection with space. And so one of the things I do is I get students to declare their vision for themselves and to see themselves in the future and announce it to other people. If you want to be the very first space athlete in the world, go for it. Let people know. And then immediately we discern who are our allies and who supports our vision for ourselves, and who are our opponents and who think that we are stupid or wrong or incapable of doing that. And then we bring the people in who are allies close to us, who support us close to us. And then we distance ourselves from the people who don't believe in our dreams. It doesn't mean we stop caring about them or that we stop loving them, because sometimes people the closest to us are the people who maybe they didn't believe in their dreams, and so they're projecting onto us.
Oh, preach. Wait, say that again for those in the back. Not everybody. There are gonna be a lot of people that care about you that are not going to be behind the things that you do.
Absolutely.
And that does not mean that what they think they're doing is they care about you. And in some instances, they can be correct. These chasing a dream, making it a goal can be so much sacrifice. It can be so much risk. It is constantly a risk. I could do 7 TED Talks on all the things that have almost happened where I was this close to it being all over to get to now. And I'm sure that a lot of what you've done has been the same thing. And it's been so many people. That's why the books from astronauts and scientists and science communicators and all the stories that they have are so fascinating and interesting to watch, to listen to just be absorbed by, is because there was Scott Kelly nearly got himself kicked out of the military. And he talked about, his brother getting on to him. It's like, you need to stay home this weekend and study if you want to do anything with the rest of your life. And he listened to him, and he ended up getting his first 100% on a test in pre-calculus. And because I read that, as terrified as I was of pre-calculus, after failing it, I went back and took it again and got through that class. And because of those stories help inspire the next generation. You never know what just one of your mistakes or one of your barely got through it things is going to make so much different for people, so much of a difference for people. And I'm sure that you have countless stories with all the places you've been and all the people that you've talked to over the years that are somewhat similar to that or far surpass it.
Well, I'm 55, so I've made tons of mistakes. I've made the mistakes. I don't run away from my mistakes. I own them. My mistakes help develop me who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. And those when I was a graffiti writer as a kid, I was a graffiti artist.
Nice.
I hung with I've written an essay on how did I move from graffiti artist to astronaut teacher. And we grow and we mature from our experiences. And then we find that those outfits no longer fit us anymore because careers and roles are like outfits. And so you have a parallel story. You have told me several times that you're a DJ. You were a DJ. And then you moved and you decided that suit didn't fit you fully anymore, that you were bigger than that suit. And now you've grown into this role. And now Ron Sparkman, holy smokes, Ron, if I have it in the last month, I've heard your name so many times. This show has become one of the hottest space shows in the US. No question. You're doing it. You've made that decision. You made choices.
And I mean, there's a lot to it, man. I get to work for a really great organization that when I said, we've got some things going on right now. What are the next steps? I was already working with our executive director, Kevin Arrangers, to do some stuff just like this. So when that hit, we were already prepared for it in some sense or way. The same thing with our formal education team. They had already been doing stuff online. We had already done audience with an astronaut for a bunch of people. So, Slade and Digger Carey, who does a lot of those with us. And there was a lot of, things that we were already trying to play around in this sandbox, right? So while everybody else was dipping their toes in the water, we were already surfing, which made it that much easier to say, well, let's step it up a notch. Let's do the next thing. And, it's been through the connections and what I've been able to do the last few years of just saying, man, these people are just awesome. And, the reason why so many people are just willing to get on the shows is because I'm just going to nerd out. It's just, this is awesome to me. This is exactly what I love doing. And it's sincere and it's authentic because I'm excited about this. There's always somebody new to talk to. There's always something new that's happening in astronomy. We are a week away. We're less than a week away from sending astronauts back to space again from American soil.
And
that's
Virgin
so cool.
Virgin Orbit announced their test flight on the 24th and 25th.
Yep.
Just today.
Yep.
It's
in Virgin Galactic, we're right around the corner from those first flights. Wally Funk is finally going to get to go to space. And for you, if you don't know who Wally Funk is, we're running short on time now. Do yourself a favor, go to Google and look up Wally Funk.
Google Wally Funk.
I'll tell you to do. There's not going to be anybody else that'll pop up. Watch the Netflix show that was based around her and the other women that were trained to be astronauts.
The
Mercury 13. Yeah, the Mercury 13. Go back and look at that, and it's just an incredible. Hopefully, we get to have her on a show someday. We're working on some things that she you never know where she might pop up. So she's absolutely incredible, but there's just so many of those incredible stories out there that you can connect with. And
stand on their shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. We get to do all those things. And it's because of that is that someone was just inspired to say, I've just got to keep doing this thing, even though I'm terrified of it all the time. You know, that you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier. It's something we've talked about before. There's so many people that do it. Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong felt that, you know, so that's something to remember, that Paul McCartney felt it. Sir Paul McCartney up till recently felt imposter syndrome. That is mind blowing. Like that is crazy to me. It's like at any time that other shoe is going to drop. I've talked about it 3 times today. It's so weird that it's come up in 3 separate conversations that had nothing to do with it.
I like talking about it so people know it exists and it's an actual thing.
It happens all the time. It happens to more people than you would expect. And let's back this up a little bit, because this is another perfect thing to talk about. Is that I know that you're involved in Yuris Night, and I've been doing this really cool thing with Loretta recently.
Loretta Whitesides.
Loretta Whitesides, and we so I've been doing her Space Kind, and she was talking about imposter syndrome and stuff. We were talking about it the other day too. But she does incredible work, and you get to work with her on Yuris Night. We do our own Yuris Night. We're lucky to have a big one because it coincides with Space Symposium every year. But if I remember correctly, you help run the one this year. The one that was online.
One of the directors of Yuris Night. So like I'm one.
There's a bunch of pieces to it. So just give us all the details.
Exactly. Like there's all the different Yuris Nights. So with this year, because we were well prepared for the possibility that we weren't going to have Yuris Night at the California Science Center underneath the Endeavour, or at the Kennedy Space Center underneath the Atlantis. And I put on that one with Ryan Robertson, who was in SEDS, by the way. And I'm the co-director of that. We started that several years ago. We actually decided to do it at the launch of the Falcon Heavy. We were both we were guests at the Falcon Heavy launch, and that was when we decided that we're going to put on a Yuris Night at the Kennedy Space Center. Bob Cabanas has been fantastic ally and help for us for doing that. Well, this year all of that got flattened, and so we had a couple weeks to decide what we were going to do for Yuris Night. So we put on Yuris Night Global. And we did it live with Subtractive and TMRO, and this amazing team, Jeff Notkin and Cyan Proctor, my gosh, and what's the guy? A lot of the people from The Expanse.
Cass Avar. So Cass, yes. It was Cass, Cyan, and Tanya. And if you don't know Cass Avar, he's one of the biggest supporters of space out there. He does like every space event. He's like, I can't wait to be there. And one, I love that he does that. And 2 is, when you hear that interview, you might expect that it's going to be those 2 incredible doctors and science communicators that are just huge advocates for the space industry, that they're going to be interviewing him. I don't know if that's the way it was originally going to happen, but that's not how it played out, because he just falls into this line of questioning to them, wanting to know more about what's really going on. Yeah, and it's just the deference to them, and just the way that he was awesome. And I think that's great. I just saw it on another webinar. I just saw Jonathan Frakes do the same thing to Aaron McDonald, to Dr. Aaron McDonald, where he's asking her about stuff like, so I actually got a question for you, Aaron. What's this? The love of the actors and the directors and the writers to the science consultants, the real people that understand and can tell you the science, is it's only continued to improve in Hollywood, and that's such a great thing. And let's just give a big thank you to The Martian. Oh, hard sci-fi will work. Well, maybe we should all do that. And The Expanse up till season 3 got a little crazy, got a little wacky with the stuff. But I
love The Expanse.
I love it too. It's great.
So the people that make The Expanse is Alcon Entertainment, and that is the studio that's turning my book, The Astronaut Instruction Manual, into the television series. So that's why I'm in Los Angeles right now. That's why I'm out here. We moved out here. Like the pandemic happened after that, but the pilot is underway and everything, and we're doing all that. And the reason I'm super happy to be with Alcon is because their dedication to the actual science, like having space and science in television shows, benefits us all. And it's fun to have imagination. It's fun to have creativity. And these are the kind of things that keep people interested and make it accessible to all of us.
And that's it's such a major point. It's a lot of what you do. And so if I remember correctly, obviously, we were talking a little bit about Yuris Night and the incredible things that you do with that. And I know there's a book out there that you have as the astronaut teacher. And so tell us a little bit about that as we wrap up.
So I've got my bestseller. It's a bestseller. Thank you, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has become a friend of mine, and that's a careful balancing thing for me, because I'm a big fan of Blue Origin, and I'm a big fan of of the space program, and at the same time, we get to make space available for everybody. And so when somebody has so much and other people don't have enough, like I get to have that difficult conversation. How do we make space accessible for people in South America with Jeff Bezos? And he's been very kind in that regard with me. Like that he even gives me time, or that he replies back to emails from me. It just blows my mind. But with Blue Origin and I work together to get students postcards to space. They've got the postcards to space for the future. And
we're talking about doing that with the Discovery Center. Like we've kind of pieced like some different things about how we can do that and get like the students to do it. We're still working on it, but that was something we were going to look at this spring until all this stuff happened. But we want to get thousands of those and send them to space.
Corey Bruno at ULA has been probably one of my biggest allies. He's the guy that sends my stuff to space. He's already sent stuff of mine to space. We're
a big fan of his. Tori's great. So if you don't know Tori Bruno, he's he's very active on Twitter, and he
CEO
loves
Launch Alliance.
He loves to answer people. He's constantly tweeting back answers. Sometimes they're only like one word. Sometimes they're more in depth. But he is really big about connecting people. And one of the things that we love him for is that during Space Symposium, we have the new gen track that we have. And one of them has all the people where we do the speed mentoring. Tori is either a part of it or the speaker at it, but he is always about inspiring the next group of people. And that is a wonderful thing to have. And again, this just continues to happen. I did not know that. That's the first time I've ever heard anybody talking about directly working with Bezos. He's been at Space Symposium before a couple times.
So he and I met working with students at the International Space Development Conference, and I got to introduce him to 50, maybe 25 students who won the NSS Space Settlement Contest. I got to be the person to make the introduction, and I got to say to those students, listen, they didn't know they were about to meet Jeff Bezos, and I knew, and so I got to message him before and bring books for his daughter, and it was like so funny because it was like, you can get these on Amazon, and that was a great joke. And
where can you find these? Well, Jeff,
and Amazon, it's an Amazon bestseller, which is like it opens up these conversations. And so when I was in the room before he came in the room, I got to say to these winners, they had no idea. These are students who had no idea that they were about to meet Jeff Bezos. And then I said, listen, if I was 14 and I had written a 100-page paper that gave me that I won an award for on space settlements, and there's no way I would have written a 100-page paper when I was 14, by the way. And so, I mean, like, these are amazing students. I said, there is no way you could stop me from getting a selfie with Jeff Bezos, just so you know. And so when they ran up to me afterwards, after they had met him, and come up and were like, Mike, look. And there's a picture of them with Jeff Bezos that they're taking to their whatever country. They're from countries from, it's the International Space Development Conference. They're from countries all over the world. And when they're 14, that picture is going to catalyze their future. That's going to catalyze our future.
That's a big one. It really is.
We as grown-ups have that opportunity to foster these relationships and to open up possibilities and opportunities.
So I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say,
it gives me meaning. Like it's the whole purpose of why I do this. It's why I put in the hours. At the International Space Development Conference, this is in Toronto, there was a 16-year-old. He had a poster up, and I was walking past, and I said, how's it going? And he goes, hey, how's your conference? Which is a very mature thing for a 16-year-old to say. I'm like, it's great. How's yours? And he said, somebody just walked past, and they told me that if you do what you love, that you'll never work a day in your life. And I stopped in my tracks, and I said, my friend, my young man, young sir, let me share something with you. If you do,
let me tell you something.
If you do what you love, you will never work harder at anything in your entire life. You will stay up late. You will get up early. You will walk farther. I mean, like I know you know.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I stopped working. I'm editing videos. I mean, I wasn't doing a YouTube channel. I was traveling around. But the world changed, and I had I shifted. And so that's how that whole thing works.
And I got people always ask me, when do I sleep? I'm like, why would I want to? You know, it's like, I know it's the FOMO, but it's in, and I'm not saying that, of course, I sleep. I absolutely do. Everybody asks me, yes, I sleep. I absolutely get sleep every night. I cannot live without sleep. So yes, I do sleep. But it's the thing of, you stay up a little later, you get up a little earlier, because when you wake up, you get excited to go through your emails because all these cool things are going on. You get to wake up every day and some other cool thing is happening, especially in the space industry. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen elsewhere. I mean, if you're in the movie business, you get to wake up and get emails from all these amazing people. Yeah, there's just so many different ways that you can have that. And if you can do everything you can to get there, and it's going to take a lot of, I'm going to work a normal job. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to put in probably another 40 hours plus a week to be able to get to that point. And it is going to be difficult, but there is so much. It's so worth it when it finally happens, when, there's no such thing as an overnight success. That overnight success took a minimum of 6 years. I can't remember exactly how it is.
I'm overnight success, 15 years in the making. Exactly.
There's always that. And there's always going to be those. And it's just, always remember that it's worth all the work. And then whenever you get to do it, you get to look back and say, if it wasn't overnight success, you wouldn't appreciate it and you would lose it. It's generally how it is. All that work that goes into it is really, it's so important. And on that note, next time you talk to Jeff, tell him that I definitely want him on this show. So that way we can talk about Blue Origin, because I want to be on one of those rockets. I can't wait to go to space.
And I just want to say, we wouldn't have met if it wasn't. Cyan Proctor is the one that made this happen. She is the most amazing. She's one of the most amazing friends I have. She's a personal ally, and I'm glad that she introduced us.
Same. And to mention that one, and not to cut that short, because I absolutely am on that same sentiment, is Cyan will be on a very special episode that we're going to do next Tuesday. It's going to be about an hour and a half long, and we're going to have the entire Sensoria crew. If you don't know what Sensoria crew is, the Sensoria program, look it up and see what they did on High Seas. It was an all-female group that did it's a Mars analog mission, is what High Seas is. And they all went out there, they documented it. Everybody on that list is incredible. So we're going to do a long one. I'm actually going to have the co-host, which is Colleen. You've heard her be a part of. She's one of the hosts of Space4U, the actual recorded podcast. We're going to do it together. It's going to be really awesome. You should definitely be there for that, because every single one of them are amazing. But I'm so glad that Cy reached out on that one. And actually, you don't know about it, but you were one of the first people to retweet a couple of years ago when I was one of Emily Calandrelli's student astronaut finalists. I'm the oldest person to ever be a finalist on that. And you actually added me like years ago, but you just didn't remember it. But I remembered it because I remember the blue check mark. I'm like, who is Mike Mongo? And you know what's funny is that there's a box around here somewhere that's like Mongo's Peaches or something. And I've had that box for years, and every time I see it, I laugh because of you, because I always remember that last name. But yeah, it's just one of those things that popped out. So I'm glad that we got to do this. By the way, we very rarely go over 30 minutes. We're approaching 50 minutes now.
Oh, wow.
So it's just been that easy of a flow. So give everybody a breakdown of where they can find you, what you're up to, because I know there's a couple things on social media, a couple different platforms that you are working on now that are new that we haven't talked about. So give them a quick breakdown as we wrap up.
The best place to follow me is on YouTube. Go to Mike Mongo on YouTube and follow me for Mike Mongo's Astronaut Adventures. It's also on Facebook, Mike Mongo's Astronaut Adventures, and you just Google it, it comes right up. You can search in Facebook, it comes right up. And if you can share that with students in your life, it would mean the world to me. There is a talk that I give called Send Jim Bridenstine, Send NASA a Postcard. Look at that talk and show it to a kid, and have a student in your life write a letter to NASA so they can get one back. Everything else takes care of itself.
Love it. Mike, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. Keep doing everything you're doing. It's awesome. And I love the show you did last week with, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago with Jen and Ivy. I just mentioned something to her about, I'm like, I would love to see these two do a show together. And 2 mornings later it happened. I was stoked about that. So keep doing what you're doing. And we thank you for all you're doing to connect with kids out there. And it's appreciated.
Cool. Thanks, Ron. Keep up the good work.
Will do. And everybody, that is going to conclude this episode of the live edition of Space Foundation's Space4U podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and on Google Play. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and of course our website, www.spacefoundation.org, where you can also learn about the various ways you can support the Space Foundation. And don't forget to visit www.discoverspace.org for more digital content just like this, as well as content for teachers, parents, and students. You can support the Space Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, by visiting www.spacefoundation.org/donate. And on all these outlets and more, it's our goal to inspire, educate, connect, and advocate for the space community. Because of the Space Foundation, we will always have space for you. Thank you, everybody, for joining today.